Welcome back to Driving Success, a Fleet Advantage podcast. I'm your host, Tracy Derival, and this is my guest, Hadley and Benton. And we are so excited to have you all join us on our second episode. For those of you who are tuning in for the first time, I'm going to give you a little rundown on Fleet Advantage and who we are. So we serve America's top transportation fleets in the country, and we guarantee the absolute lowest cost and ownership by providing specialty financing, fleet data analytics, fleet management services, and lifecycle cost management for corporate transportation fleets. And in this episode, we are going to be talking about all things full service lease related. And Hadley Benton, who is our Executive Vice President of Business Development, he's going to be shedding some light on the major differences between the two and why they matter. So thank you so much for being on the show, Hadley, and we are so excited to have you.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks, Tracy.
Awesome. To kick things off, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background within the transportation industry?
Sure, I'd love to. So as you mentioned, I'm the Executive Vice President of Business Development here at Fleet Advantage. But prior to joining Fleet Advantage, I was actually started my career in transportation in risk management. So I spent almost 7 years working with insurance companies, helping their insureds reduce their collision rates. And then later I moved into the financing side of the business. I worked for a couple of other fleet management companies prior to joining Fleet Advantage. And so I've actually been in the industry for over 25 years now.
That's amazing. And fun fact, Hadley and I, we are alumni of the Florida State University. So we are both Seminoles.
Go Noles.
Listen, it's not a coincidence that our paths are crossing like this, you know. Great things happen when Seminoles get together.
It's destiny.
Awesome. So back to the show, right? Today, I wanted to dive into breaking down the major differences between a full service lease and an unbundled lease. But before we get too deep into it, can you explain what an FSL contract is?
Yeah, sure. So what we refer to as FSL is a full service lease contract, which quite simply is just where you bundle the financing cost of the asset with the maintenance cost into one monthly payment.
Okay. Can you tell me what the principal difference is between an FSL and an unbundled lease?
Yeah, so really it kind of boils down to cost and also flexibility. So if you think about having one monthly payment that includes your financing costs and your maintenance expense, there's not a lot of transparency in that. And there's also not any flexibility because that structure typically consists of a fixed term, a certain number of miles, and over the life of the asset, you don't really have much opportunity to either exchange or turn in that asset early or extend it without some sort of penalty.
Okay. You mentioned flexibility. Why is flexibility so important when it comes to a fleet's lease structure?
Well, in the transportation world, you think about how dynamic our market is. I mean, things are constantly changing. New technology comes out. So you might have a safer piece of equipment that you want to put into service. Think about what happened during COVID. I mean, we didn't know that was going to happen, but all of a sudden it made the supply chain get jammed up and it was very difficult to get a truck. Look at what's coming up in 27 with the CARB changes and regulations, and very similar event to what's going on. What happened with COVID is going to happen and create a pre-buy scenario. So changes in the market a lot of times dictate the life cycle of your asset, not to mention the number of miles you're running. So having the ability to get in and out of that asset at the ideal time is really why you need that flexibility.
Okay. Now let's touch on a little bit about cost. What kind of a financial impact would an FSL lease have on a company's bottom line versus an unbundled lease?
Well, when you're including the maintenance cost in the financing, typically what's happening is, at least in the early years of its life, you're really overpaying for maintenance that you're not using, because you're going to make that fixed payment for the life of the asset. When the truck's new and it's also under warranty, you don't have a whole lot of major expenses, but whether you're using it or not, you're still going to be making the same monthly payment. If you think about the alternative, which is, unbundling those two costs and having the maintenance costs separate, it really allows you to manage your maintenance expense based on the life of the asset and what's actually needed. So you pay for it as you go, as opposed to paying for it all up front.
Okay. Now let's steer into M&R, right? And let's talk about the impact on that. Usually when a company is going the FSL route, having the maintenance and repair included in their payment is usually like a deciding factor for them. So for the organizations who are choosing an unbundled lease structure, what can they do to make sure that their maintenance isn't being affected?
Well, so you make a great point. What I hear a lot of folks say is it's kind of like hitting the easy button for the FSL version because they don't have to worry about maintenance. It's all baked in. And their lease provider is going to maintain the trucks on their behalf. You're going to, as I mentioned before, it's typically going to be a lot more expensive. You could be spending $500 to $1,000 more per month to have all of that included. So if you think about the alternative where you unbundle that maintenance, yes, you've got to be more mindful of your asset maintenance and how you're going to have that done, but you're typically going to be using the same company that's providing the maintenance under an FSL, or simply move it to a managed maintenance program with a third party. So they're going to provide that oversight and help you make sure that you're staying, obviously maintaining equipment to the standards that they have to be maintained to, but also saving money at the same time.
Right. When a company has decided that they would like to unbundle, when do you think is the right time for them to consider transitioning their current lease agreement?
Well, that's also a great question. I mean, really probably the best time is as they're looking at their next order cycle, their trade cycle. So as they're looking at the replacement of the existing assets, that's the best time to start thinking about what's the most efficient use of my capital? What should I consider as far as finance cost, maintenance expense, and really look at my total cost of ownership, and then do an analysis of what the full service lease cost looks like compared to the alternative.
For those companies who are transitioning from an FSL to a UBL, what are some best practices that you can share to make sure that they are still able to maintain reliable maintenance services while trying to optimize cost savings?
Well, this can be a complicated process if you're not, at a minimum, collaborating with not only your lessor, but find some reputable maintenance providers out there in the industry that can also help you kind of work through this process. So I think that's first, should be at the top of the list, is have a good partner that can help you. Second, I would say is make sure you're using your own data and data analytics to help make the decision, because you're going to want to conduct a really thorough full service lease versus unbundled lease analysis to help you make the best choice for your business. It may not be a fit for everyone, but you won't really know until you go down that path, and make sure you have a really thorough process to kind of weigh the two against each other, understand the costs that are behind each one, and then be able to budget and understand what that's going to do to your total cost of ownership, and also how it might reduce your costs down the road.
Okay. Those are actually some really great suggestions that I know for a fact that can definitely help a company out there with a transportation fleet. So, Hadley, thank you so much for coming on the show and just sharing your insights on knowing the differences between an FSL and a UBL, and highlighting the importance of making informed decisions when it comes to fleet management.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
And on that note, we are going to conclude this episode right here, because we have so much information that we want to share with you guys. So please stay tuned for part 2, where we are going to be discussing alternative fleet maintenance solutions for those once decided to unbundle. Continue to join us as we explore the latest trends that is shaping our industry. To catch our podcast, you can listen to us on Spotify, and we are now on iHeartRadio. To watch this episode, you can go on our social media platforms such as YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. Subscribe for more episodes on all things transportation related. Until next time, let's continue to drive solutions together.